This is Matt Rosen, and this is the Grit Mindset with me, your host, Matt Rosen. The mission of the Grit Mindset is to inspire and empower our listeners by delving deep into the journeys of those who have faced significant challenges and emerged stronger. Through authentic conversations, we uncover the mindsets, strategies, and lessons that have propelled these individuals to overcome adversity and achieve success. My aim is to provide actionable insights and real-world advice to help our listeners cultivate their own grit and navigate their personal and professional lives with confidence and resilience. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Grit Mindset with Matt Rosen. I'm your host, Matt Rosen. Got a guest with me here, as always, a buddy of mine named Ted Clouser. He has relocated recently from Arkansas, getting his business going in the DFW area. Was introduced by a mutual friend, John Humphrey, who we had on the show a few weeks ago. We're going to be talking about grit today. So, Ted, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great to have you on. So, why don't you start by telling us just a little bit about yourself and how the heck did you get here from Arkansas?
Yeah, no, it's a great story. So, I actually grew up on a farm in central Pennsylvania, a dairy farm that's still operating to this day. And the youngest of three, I had two older brothers. And the downside of growing up on a farm with two older brothers is when you can't fix anything or grow anything, you're of no value whatsoever to the farm.
And I'm sure anything they didn't want to do, you had to do.
That's exactly right. I
typically
shoveled a lot of manure, absolutely, and painted fences. I still to this day hate painting fences. But at a young age, I realized that the farm life wasn't for me. And so I actually had a passion for computers. And back in the day, it was the green screen, right? Or the amber screen. And so I would do some things on the farm, bookkeeping, and then I was actually in the Future Farmers of America. That did not work out very well for me, by the way.
What did you raise?
Yeah, I actually raised rabbits,
okay.
Believe it or not.
Rabbits,
but was in FFA and spent a lot of my time on the computer playing Sim Farm and things of that nature during school. And I just realized, okay, computers are for me. So I graduated high school at 16 and decided I was going to start my own computer business and take over the world. Well, in rural Pennsylvania, it's all Amish and no power. So it's a bad idea to start a business.
Not a lot of them wanted to buy computer services from you?
Not at all. So I ended up getting about 3 clients and realized it wasn't sustainable. So when I was 17, I went and worked at a computer company in State College, which is the home of Penn State University. And then at age 18, I decided, okay, I'm gonna conquer the world, right? I had not really traveled that much. I didn't know much about anything other than central Pennsylvania. But I had a friend that lived in Arkansas, and I knew of President Clinton and thought, why not? Let me just pick up and move. So at age 18, with a car and $400 in my wallet, I headed to Arkansas, and the rest is just a big part of my story, right? That's how I ended up here. Yeah. And then the journey began.
Gotcha. So what inspired you to get into computers out on a dairy farm?
I think it was the fact that dairy farming wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And I liken it a lot to, I understood computers much like somebody who has a musical talent can pick up any instrument. I just understood how they worked. And so I started to really enjoy the computer side of it. But truly, I learned over time my passion was the business side of it.
Yeah, well, that's cool. My first computer was a Commodore 64. I don't know what you ended up with.
I had a Commodore 64 as well.
Program Basic. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Haven't programmed in a long time.
No.
But so we're here to talk about grit today. So I always like to ask all our guests, what does grit mean to you, and share an early experience with grit.
Yeah. So grit to me is about passion and perseverance. Yeah. And I actually read Angela Duckworth's book a few years back. It's what really put the term to use for me. I always understood the concept of grit. Growing up on a farm, I think you had to have grit, right? You had to persevere and you had to push through. A story, though, I was just thinking about this morning. I've shared my story a lot, and I usually start at age 16. But it's interesting that that I may have had grit at a younger age than I was thinking of before. So when I was 4 years old, I went to a neighbor's, and we normally would go through the process of, he had a dog, it was a German Shepherd. He would hold the dog, we would walk around, go into the woods and play. Well, one day I decided, you don't have to hold the dog, no big deal. I calculated how far that chain would go, and I made a wrong calculation. So at age 4, I was attacked by a St. Bernard, 150 stitches in the left side of my face. I still have a very vivid image of that dog gnawing down on me. And I was in the hospital for a week. And my dad tells me that they actually sewed me up wrong, and my face turned purple, and he had to go say to the doctor, something doesn't seem right.
Look right now. So they
actually did it again the second time. And, as I was thinking about grit and what it takes, I may have had grit before I realized what it was through that process. Because that could have killed me, for one. I shouldn't be on this earth. And so there had to be a bigger purpose, right? And so coming out of that, even at a young age, I at least realized there was something meant for me.
Yeah, well, that's scary. Glad that worked out okay, and you had a good plastic surgeon, I guess.
Well, that was in 1982 or whatever, so I'm very thankful that we were able to recover the way. I have some scars there from the bites, but.
Gotcha. So age 16, you graduated from high school.
I did.
Yeah, so done early.
So I skipped. I started in third grade. I started in third and finished the year in fourth.
Yeah.
I hated school, by the way. I could not get out of school quick enough, clearly.
Yeah.
And just really wanted to do something other than the books.
Got it. So made it to Arkansas, and you got involved with the business or started your first business. Tell us kind of what happened there. You said you usually start at age 16, go forward. We got to Arkansas. What happens?
Yeah.
What happens next?
So come to Arkansas in 1996. I'm here 3 weeks, and back then we had the Yellow Pages. Yeah. And so I took my resume, which wasn't necessarily that amazing, but I faxed it out to every computer company in the Yellow Pages. I got called back by 3 of them for interviews and hired by one, which is the company I now own today.
That's amazing. So tell us about what that process looked like, going from taking a job to then owning the organization. And what were some of the struggles along the way?
Yeah, so I'm very thankful that the owner and the founder took a chance on me at a young age, right? An 18-year-old kid coming out of central Pennsylvania. I was very fortunate. I owe a lot of my success to just him taking a chance on me.
Yeah.
I started with really break fix. And one of the things I think was valuable was back in state college, I had worked with a company called USNet, which was just a warranty hardware provider. So we had contracts with Dell. And I think about grit. I mean, one of the selling points is I had said, hey, I can bring this with me. I know how to work this. We can get some warranty work and I can bring business here. And there was about maybe 4 or 5 employees at the company at the time. So I came on and I really started to build that relationship and was out replacing modems, replacing motherboards, spent a lot of time working on Dell and Packard Bell back in the day, replacing modems and you name it. It was just all about replacing. And then around 97, I sold my first network install. And again, it was one of those, the company really wasn't experienced in this. It was a Novell network. We were going to move it to Windows. And I just thought, how hard can it be? And again, it goes back to that grit mindset, right? I'm thinking, I mean, if somebody can do it, then I ought to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And so I really began to build that mindset. So successfully able to take that on and then began to land some other networking clients. And around 2001, we worked an arrangement with Alltel Wireless, which has now become Verizon and different changes over the years, but we were their first DSL partner in the state of Arkansas. So worked a relationship with a sales rep. And again, I think of that grit mindset, right? I built a career on outkicking my coverage. It was, here's the things that I think I can do. If you'll give me a shot, I'll prove myself. And so we formed this partnership to be the DSL installer with Alltel, which was a huge journey. And again, that was 2001. So I'll pause there for a second to begin to talk about some of those next things.
So that's actually where I got my start in consulting, was selling early Windows 2000s from Novell Networks.
Nice.
So, but I didn't have to implement them. I just went and found the projects, and I had smart guys like you figure it out. So,
I had to do both,
Yeah, you're having to eat what you killed.
That's exactly right. And so 2001, the company was growing as a result of that, and so I was promoted to executive vice president. So at that point, I became the number 2 in the company. And really, over the course of the next 20-some years, or 17 years, we grew pretty well. I was of the mindset of and I'll talk about some of the transition, but I was in the mindset of I needed to be able to support it, so I wanted to grow slowly, but grow consistently.
Did you know that you were going to buy it one day?
No. And I never had a desire to purchase the company. I mean, the owner always wanted me to purchase it, but I was like, no problem, you'll live forever, it's not a big deal, that type of stuff. So building a company, and then around 2017, that's when he had decided that he was ready to pursue other ventures. I'm a man of faith, and so I firmly believe God wanted me to buy the company. I had zero desire to do it, but over the transitional period of 2017, it just fell into place. We worked out an arrangement where I was able to purchase the company. I thought it was a smart idea to go ahead and purchase $1.5 million building at the same time, which actually was a smart idea, just at the time was not necessarily. And so being able to put all these things together, I can in hindsight see where I was supposed to purchase it all.
Yeah. Well, what were some of the challenges going through that process? Because obviously this was somebody else's baby.
Yeah.
It's always tough when you're taking things over. People have hesitations, buyer or seller's remorse, things like that. Walk us through, that process, and were there some challenges that you encountered along the way?
Oh yeah. So bought the business in 2018, and not everybody. I had multiple people trying to tell me along the way, it's going to be a lot harder than you think. And I'm like, no, it's not. I've been running this thing like I owned it the whole time. It's going to be easy. It's not a big deal. I'm perfectly equipped for this. And so we hit January 1st, 2018. I'm the new owner, new sheriff in town. I'm all excited. Talk to the team and throw out all these ideas. And for the 6 months, first 6 months, it was very blissful. And then I started to realize things weren't happening. Things weren't necessarily moving like they should. And when I started to investigate why, it's because for 20 years I had built this TED-centric company. The solutions and the processes were ask Ted. Ted will fix it. Ted knows how to do that. And I'm sitting here looking and thinking, oh my goodness. I have bought a company that literally can't function without me, and I'm trying to shift to another role. I'm trying to take over accounting functions and some of these other things, and it was a mess. And so 6 months into the process is when I really began a downward spiral. And so over the course of 18 months, I went through a season of depression. I turned 40. I've been married 20 years. My daughter was going off to college. I had all of these life changes.
Yeah.
Then you bundle in on millions of dollars in debt, and it just crippled me. And so often I would not find myself being able to get out of bed in the mornings. I would be in the bathtub by 2 p.m, just completely drained, hopeless. I was fearing things that would happen 18 months in the future. It was terrible. Now, fortunately, my wife had worked at the company at that time, and my COO, my number 2, they really rallied, and they realized, okay, we need to help. This is pretty dire. And I was open. I was as transparent as I could be with them to say, I'm not in a good place.
Yeah.
And for 18 months, I battled that demon.
So what did you do to snap out of that? Because I think a lot of our listeners have been through a time where felt despair, fear, whatever that emotion or set of emotions was. How did you push through that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say grit probably played a big part of that. So during that process, probably 12 months into it, my wife was super patient with me, and she was understanding. About 12 months in, she's thinking, okay, so do you think the end's in sight anytime soon? Do you think you're starting to really round this corner? And I said, I don't know. It's just everything seems so terrible. And she said, okay, let's walk through it. What's the worst that could happen? I said, well, this and this and this and this. Yeah, that's bad. She goes, that would be terrible. Then what? Well, then it'd be this and bankruptcy and this. And she goes, oh my goodness, that'd be awful. Then what? What do you mean then what? Everything would be gone. She goes, you're right. But you'd still have me. You'd still have your kids. You'd still have this and you'd still have this.
Right.
And she said, the only way you can get out of this is to focus on it one day at a time.
Yeah.
And so literally, I built an entire mantra of, we're going to win this 1-0. Go win the day.
Yeah.
Right? So go win the day. If I can win today, that seemed manageable to me.
Yeah.
18 months from now, not manageable. Today, manageable. So I started to work on really what that would look like. And it's interesting, I mentioned I'm a man of faith. I never walked away from God during that. I never had suicidal thoughts. It wasn't any of those types of things. Okay. In fact, I was probably closer to God than I've ever been. The interesting thing is I had not faced much diversity in my life. I'd lived a pretty good life. I would look at people and think, man, why are they being depressed? Just tell yourself not to be depressed. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
And guess what? It's hard.
Yeah.
I can say unequivocally now, I have a completely different understanding. When somebody says they're an alcoholic or when somebody says they're depressed, I understand now there's a true chemical issue.
Yeah.
and there's a real demon that you have to battle that I didn't understand before. And so as I began to work on trying to win every day, how's today? Today's Friday. Am I going to get to the end of the day with some successes? And so I was coming towards the end of it around March of 2020. 2020.
Good timing.
What happened? COVID. And so it was interesting because at COVID, what that did for me is I looked around. I had spent 18 months thinking, I'm losing. Everybody's beating me. When COVID happened, I looked and thought, everybody's losing. We are all back on the level playing field. And it really rejuvenated me. Again, I was on the back end, so I think that's important to note. But I was able to come out with a vengeance and help lead our company through this because nobody knew how to do it.
Yeah.
And what did I share earlier in my story? If nobody knows how to do it, I'm probably pretty decent at it. I've learned that I can tackle the things that others around me might not know how to do.
Yeah. So what did you do about the fact that the answer had always fallen with you? If you were, not in it day to day there for 18 months, did people take your place? Were people forced to step up? What did that look like?
Absolutely. My COO, my EVP, Stephanie, my Chief Brand Officer, all really rallied to sort of juggle the plates. And I would say a big portion of what put us where we are today, which is a much better spot, was EOS and traction. I wish I would have had that originally. I wish I would have actually had processes implemented. And my first business coach, who has since passed away, has a lot of mantras that we still use in the organization. But one of those was you need to be process dependent, people enhanced.
Yeah.
What I had built was a people dependent,
Yeah.
maybe process enhanced organization.
Well, that's pretty common for a lot of founder entrepreneurs is to build it in their own image and around themselves, and they like to be the smartest person that solves everything. But that only scales to a certain point. So.
No doubt. Well, and I think that the challenge is we in that position then begin this unhealthy relationship with that existence, right? So PCA became my identity, or maybe became the other person in my life that took over. It was just unhealthy. And so God said, I'll take care of that.
Yeah. So you hit COVID out of kind of the depressed state, ready to take on the world. So tell us about what happened after that.
Yeah, so we had already rebranded the company at that point. It was PC Assistance prior to that. Now we become PCA Technology Solutions. I have big plans. Come out of it through COVID, really leading through. We became obviously the virtual entity that others had to. But we recognized that to be different, we really wanted to rally even remotely. So we started a daily huddle, which we still continue to this day. So at 8:15 every morning, our entire team from around the globe get together for 15 minutes.
That's awesome.
And we go through wins, we go through challenges, obstacles, and we end it with the Go Win the Day mantra, which is not something I've mandated. What was super cool is that I was very transparent with my team about my challenges. And that was something the team decided that they wanted to do, that we're going to win the day as a company as well. And so I thought that was always really cool.
Yeah, I like that Go Win the Day, because it's easy to get caught up in how am I going to get through the next couple months or next year or next decade. And while it's good to look forward, sometimes when faced with adversity, you got to be like, let's just get through today and have a few wins, and then we'll get up the next day and win again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Makes
think
a huge difference.
It does.
Measurable and compact.
It does. Just like you said, we've got to have our goals, and we know what our goal is, our 10-year goal. We know what our 3-year goal is.
Yeah.
What's my goal today?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
well, kudos for getting through that. So you mentioned the fact you've got grown kids. You grew up dairy farm. Got into business early. What have you done to instill grit in them? Because that's one of the reasons I started this podcast. Was I feel like there is a lack of grit among some of the younger generation. Those didn't grow up with as much adversity. So, we'd love to hear what you've done with them to try and inspire the same level of grit you have in them.
Yeah. I would say sports. They both. My daughter was a gymnast. I mean, come on, how can you not have grit?
Yeah,
to be a
that's
gymnast,
tough.
Right? And then volleyball and softball, and she just had grit through sports. And my son was a basketball player, and made it all the way to have a D1 offer.
Nice.
And man, that really instilled grit. We didn't ask them to go work a job because we saw those sports as a job at the competitive level that they were at.
Yeah.
We wanted them to focus on school, and we wanted them to focus on job. But they didn't get participation trophies. I coached my son's basketball a lot, and that's a challenge, right? Because you have to make sure your expectations are realistic. But being truthful with our kids, right? I would say to our child in a loving manner, you didn't play your best today.
Yeah.
It wasn't about something specific or you're not good, or it was you didn't play your best today, right? And I think as parents, we want to encourage our children to go out there and give their very best. But I think we owe it to them in a kind and caring manner to say, you didn't give your best today. What's going on? Is there something else that's happening? Was there another reason? And I think that can help instill grit, because if they own what it is, maybe they just didn't feel like giving it their best today. But I think acknowledging that you didn't is the important part.
That's great. Do you take a similar approach with your team?
Yes, absolutely. I think that EOS has certainly taught us the importance of objectivity. I was a very subjective leader. Unfortunately, for a lot of my career, it was, I don't feel like you're doing your job. Okay, well, tell me what I'm not doing. I don't know, I just don't feel like it.
Yeah.
And that's not cool.
Well,
right?
that's tough to overcome.
Absolutely.
Someone getting that message.
And so with EOS, setting up measurables, having weekly conversations about how are you doing with your rocks? Do you think you're going to accomplish this? If not, why? What do we need to do to help you? So when we get to the end of the quarter and they haven't done something, it's not the leader's problem. It's your problem, right? Where's your grit? How did you push through? So I think that teaches it through that, man.
Yeah, and for those listening that might not know what EOS is, what is it and what has it done for you?
So we learned about traction, Gino Wickman's book. And in Traction and all of the other books that I've also read, it's the entrepreneurial operating system. And what they say is that every organization runs on an operating system. Most of them are simply chaos. And that's what we were, right? It was a very subjective way to do things. It was, I hope we do this. Let's try to do this. And with the EOS system, we have weekly level 10 meetings where we talk about issues that we need to address and solve, and we celebrate wins. We talk about metrics, all of those things.
Gotcha. So you got through COVID. You're now relocating to Dallas to try and restart the success you had in Arkansas here. What do you kind of see as the opportunities and challenges ahead for you?
So with EOS, we put a 10-year goal, and our 10-year goal was essentially to 3x the company, not in employee count, but in revenue.
Yeah.
And as we looked in Arkansas, which we've built a strong reputation in for 30 years, I thought, I'm not sure how we do this in Arkansas.
Yeah, just not enough companies to work with.
That's exactly right, and that's all I knew. There's about 3 million people in the entire state of Arkansas. You have the big three up in the top. Up in Northwest, you've got Walmart, J.B. Hunt, Tyson. That's huge. But otherwise, it's a lot of sub 100 companies.
Yeah.
And so my wife was chief brand officer at the time. We had looked at different markets. We looked at everything that was within 5 hours of Little Rock, and then we also looked at places you could fly to direct. So Denver, Atlanta, or other organizations, even Chicago or other cities. And she comes back with the study, and it's like, I don't know how we didn't really think about this, but Dallas is in our backyard, and it is immense what the opportunity is. And so we started really looking and thinking through it and thought, okay, how do we do this right? How do we do this in a world-class mindset? And so we felt like the best way to do that was to be a part of the community.
Yeah.
And so it all happened really quick. We came down last year and literally ended up buying a condo the weekend that we were here in Uptown. And it has been a tremendous place to really get embedded. I love the walkability of it. And then after that, it was all about relationships, because to me, I built the organization in Little Rock around conversation. And so how was I going to do it in Dallas? So I started out with this mindset of, man, it's really big. And people had told me if you're going to be in Fort Worth, it's much different than doing business in Dallas. So I started narrowing it down. And really the Uptown focus allowed me to say, okay, let me look within 2 to 5 miles just inside of Uptown. But then it shifted to, let me use relationships. And so a friend of mine in Little Rock said, hey, I've got a guy I went to school with that you need to meet.
Yeah.
And so he introduced me to John Humphrey. And since then, John has opened up his network, and I've met other people like yourself, and then continuing to get plugged in. And what I will say about Dallas, it is so welcoming.
Yeah.
It's so warm. And honestly, I've had more dinners in homes here in Dallas than maybe I have in Little Rock, just because Little Rock is a different community.
Yeah, I know Dallas is one of the most welcoming places I've ever lived, and that's why I've made a career here in my home for the last, 27 years now, 28 years. So
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a good town, and lots of people still coming.
Yeah, and part of it, when we changed from PC Assistance to PCA Technology Solutions, it was important to me to not forget our roots.
Yeah.
So it's very important for me to remember Little Rock was where we started.
Yeah.
And so our small business headquarters are in Little Rock, and our enterprise headquarters are in Dallas. And we're being very intentional about the fact that Little Rock is still the core for SMB. That sub 100 market that helped us build where we are, still
That's
staying
good
in Little
not
Rock.
to forget where you came from. So we talked about a couple stories that were particularly challenging. Obviously, the attack from the St. Bernard, you overcoming that, getting out of school early, buying business from the owner. Are there any other stories you can share where you really had to dig deep to overcome some adversity? I mean, we covered some tough stuff, but any other stories to share with our listeners, maybe from the business or personal world that you can share?
I think that's what's so vital about those stories is that I had spent 20 years of my life really being fortunate, being blessed. I will say that after the transition or after that period of time when I really had to go back and look at who I was as a person, I had to essentially rebuild myself. And I've learned a lot from my wife through the process. We're coming up on 27 years of marriage.
Congrats, that's great.
But what she shared with me is that the first 20 years were really hard and much harder than I realized. She said, Ted, you didn't really listen to me that much. You weren't necessarily engaged. You were always distracted. You were always thinking about work.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? And she's like, go talk to your daughter. Go talk to your son. Yes, you were around. You were at their ball games. You were at these things. But you didn't listen to them. You were always checklisting off. And afterwards, going through the process and really rebuilding yourself because you were totally broken during this process, she said, you've come out a better listener. You're actually more engaged. You're not trying to just get the conversation over so you can get back to work. You're really starting to balance. And I would say that's an important piece of it. Now, I did get counseling. I did get on some medication to go through that challenging season, but it slowed down my brain and it helped me recognize where my priorities were. And she said, Ted, you don't realize how close we were to me, just us being partners in the house. And I'm like, no, I had zero clue.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, anybody that looked around wouldn't have had any clue. But I think it's very important to really be vulnerable about that because I put my head in the sand and I did just enough that she was always like, yeah, you'd say, hey, let's go on a trip. And vacation, Dad, everybody loved vacation, Ted.
Yeah.
But when you got back, you're just work, work, work.
Yeah, it's easy to do, and that's where having a grit mindset is tough. It's easy to get all in, especially as guys, and get one-track mind focused on the goal we're trying to achieve, and everything else is kind of a check mark. And remember to take time for our spouses and family. I think is a really important recognition, and glad that, unfortunately, you had to go through a tough time to recognize that.
Well, they'll be there, right?
Yeah.
They are going to be there until the end of time. And as wonderful as we think we are as men and leaders, then 2 generations from now, nobody's going to think of us. Nobody's going to remember us. But our children and our grandchildren, they will.
Yeah. No, that's a good message for everyone listening and for me to remember as well.
Yeah. It's
Well, we're getting close to time here. Are there other things you were hoping we'd cover, or maybe some closing thoughts you want to share with our audience?
I think that, again, the concept of winning today is important. And if you think about what's in front of you, for example, we're having this podcast. If I come in here and say, I'm going to win this podcast, it's going to be the best podcast that I do. I'm going to focus. Matt's going to get my full attention. It's not going to be what I have at 10 o'clock. It's not going to be my phone. Then I'm going to be successful.
Yeah.
And then if I repeat it at my next meeting, how much are we going to see fruit from that, right? Versus if I'm thinking about what I'm going to do tomorrow or maybe a big meeting I have next week, you're not going to get the best version of me. And so the advice I would give, and it's cliche, right? Be where your feet are. But to me, it was just helpful of what's today, right? How am I going to make today the most successful I can make it?
Well, I think it's not just today, but being present in the moment.
Definitely.
I've tried to make sure I turn off my phone and throw it on the other end of this room for every podcast I do.
That's a good idea, because it's so distracting.
Yeah, it really can be. Well, I'm wishing you the best and really rooting for you as you relocate your family and your company here in Dallas. I think you're going to do great here. Anything you want to share in closing that you're offering kind of the Dallas business community? I'll give you a sec here for a commercial if you want to throw one in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we are one of the top 150 MSSPs in the world. And in Dallas, we're looking to partner with CIOs and directors of IT that need co-managed support, whether it's security, business continuity, service desk, you name it, coaching. We just want to come alongside and partner so that you can be successful, and it's about making you look good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing with the audience kind of what you're doing here. We wish you the best of luck. Thanks for coming on the show and being vulnerable, sharing the story about things that happened as a child and as you took over the business. I think it's helpful for everyone to hear. So I know Dallas has rightly welcomed you to our business community here. We're glad to have you as a part of our DFW IT Roundtable. For those listening in, hopefully you got some good insights from Ted as we all go through rough times, and over 18 months he showed how he persevered and came out the other side a stronger man and father. So hopefully everyone can take something away as they listen to the podcast. So we're going to go ahead and close this week's episode of The Grit Mindset. Stay gritty out there.